First, I would like to thank the members of my examination board for agreeing to evaluate my work, and I would like to thank the audience for coming to watch this defense. Today, I'm going to defend my thesis entitled Feeling of Retrieval in Autobiographical Memory, Exploring Pre-Retrieval Metacognitive Awareness in Younger and Older Adults. To introduce the topic of this thesis, I'd like to start with two situations you might have experienced. For the first situation, imagine that you're traveling to a new country, a country you've never visited before. While you are visiting a place in this country, you suddenly get a strange feeling that you know this place. For a moment, you feel that you could recognize this place. But then you realize this feeling is false. You know that you've never been here before and you decide not to trust it. And you don't try to recognize this place. This is a déjà vu experience and it shows that we can detect when a cognitive signal is wrong and even choose to go against it. For the second situation, consider entering in a bus and seeing a few people. So you get on a bus and you notice a man who catches your attention. You have this strong feeling that you know him, but you can't remember who he is. You first try to generate possibilities. Maybe he's a neighbor, maybe you saw him on TV, but none of these possibilities fit. And then you remember he's your butcher. That's the butcher of the bus example. Here again, it starts with a feeling of familiarity. But unlike the déjà vu experience, you know that this feeling is correct. So you choose to trust it and you start searching in your memory and you eventually recognize the man you noticed. These two situations illustrate spontaneous experiences in which we demonstrate metacognitive abilities related to our memory. And in my thesis, we tested the proposal that individuals could demonstrate similar metacognitive abilities, but in relation to their autobiographical memory. So we tested the proposal that individuals have a metacognitive access to their autobiographical memory retrieval. So this thesis is about autobiographical memory, which is the memory of the events we experienced and which give us a sense of self. And in this work, we used the self-memory system model as a basis for our theoretical framework. According to this model, autobiographical memory is hierarchically organized. At the top level of this hierarchy, there is a semantic knowledge about our life and a semantic knowledge of the important periods of our lives. Lower in the hierarchy are levels that contain episodic information. We first have the general events, which are clusters of related memories, and at the lowest level of this hierarchy, we've got the episodic information, the episodic records, which are experience-near representations. In the framework of the self-memory system, autobiographical retrieval occurs when episodic informations are activated, as well as semantic information regarding the context in which the remembered event took place. The idea of the self-memory system is that autobiographical retrieval occurs after an interaction between cues and autobiographical memory information. And this idea was later specified by works by Parchikovsky and collaborators. In their work, they proposed a view that distinguishes four stages in autobiographical retrieval. First, there is a pre-retrieval stage, which starts when a cue is processed and gives us the feeling that the memory might be retrieved. Here, we begin to monitor our thoughts and we begin to focus on our autobiographical memory. And we can choose whether we want to elaborate further on the cue and start a memory search or not. If we choose to do so, we enter the second stage, the retrieval stage, in which we elaborate further on the cue, and at this point, we can access autobiographical information either voluntarily or involuntarily. As soon as we have a fully formed memory in mind, we enter the post-retrieval stage, and finally, we enter the last stage, the retrieval outcome stage, in which we can decide whether or not to share the memory we have in mind. In this work, we were particularly interested in the metacognitive processes that accompany these different retrieval stages. We argued that these stages are accompanied by metacognitive feelings that guide autobiographical retrieval, and our goal was to study these feelings. So what do we mean by metacognition? By definition, metacognition is our ability to monitor and to control our cognitive processes. So monitoring happens when we evaluate our cognition, and control happens when these evaluations actually influence our behavior. In this work, we use the framework that posits that metacognitive abilities can be divided into two levels of complexity. We first have higher level metacognition, which allows us to deliberately evaluate our cognition, to consciously evaluate our behaviors and adapt it. For instance, in the déjà vu situation, we decide not to search for memory after assessing the feeling of familiarity we experienced in response to the place. We decided that this feeling was false, and so we decided voluntarily to not start a search in our memory. In the Butcher on the Bus, that's the opposite. We decide to start a search in our memory because we think that we can trust the feeling of knowing the man we experienced. The other level of metacognition is a faster level. It allows us to adapt quickly based on the metacognitive feelings or the epistemic feelings. These metacognitive feelings are subjective experiences or spontaneous experiences which occur in response to cues or in response to situations. They don't provide us any content, they are just a signal that tells us how our cognition is doing at the time. The déjà vu and the butcher on the bus situations start with a metacognitive feeling. In both situations, we have a feeling of familiarity that tells us that something in memory has been activated, even if we can't remember what yet. This feeling tells us that something was processed easier than expected in the environment, and so that we must have encountered this something before. So that's the place in the déjà vu and the face of the man in the butcher on the bus. So we first have this quick feeling of familiarity, which allows us to quickly monitor our memory, and then we can more deliberately evaluate this feeling and adapt our behaviors accordingly, thanks to higher level metacognitive abilities. In experimental contexts, procedures that assess metacognitive abilities require participants to either predict or to retrospectively evaluate their own performance in a given task. In this work, we focused on one of these procedures, which is the feeling of knowing, or FOK. FOK procedures can be used with both semantic and with episodic memory. In a semantic FOK task, participants are asked general knowledge questions, and when they can't recall the correct answer to the question, they make a judgment in which they report how confident they are that they could recognize the answer if it was presented. So that's the feeling of knowing judgment. After this FOK judgment, participants carry out a recognition phase in which the correct target is presented among distractors. In an episodic FOK procedure, so the procedure is very similar, but it first starts with a learning phase. For instance, participants can be asked to learn pairs of words. Later, in the recall phase, one word from each pair is presented to the participants, who have to try to recall the other word of the pair. And when they fail to make this recall, they make a feeling of knowing judgment and then a recognition test. So these two phases are similar to the semantic FOK phase. In general, people are good at predicting whether they will recognize the target they couldn't recall or not. And while this metacognitive feeling of knowing a missing information has been studied a lot in relation to episodic memory and in relation to semantic memory, its influence on autobiographical memory ritual has been less explored. And as this feeling may be important in daily life, so we wanted to investigate it. So even if this feeling hasn't been investigated a lot in relation to autobiographical memory, there are other metacognitive processes that have been theorized in relation to autobiographical memory retrieval. First, in the self-memory system, there is the idea that autobiographical retrieval involves control processes, control mechanisms that check whether what we are remembering is relevant to the situation and is in accordance to ourselves. But the term metacognition wasn't used by Conway and colleagues to describe these mechanisms. Metacognition was investigated more directly in relation to phenomena like false memories and confabulations. For instance, Gilboa and colleagues proposed the existence of a feeling of rightness during retrieval, which helps us to judge whether what we are remembering actually happened in our past or not. Similarly, Mazzoni and Kirsch proposed a framework to explain what leads individuals to choose to report or to not report the memories they retrieved. And finally, more recently, Mace and collaborators found that people can consciously use different strategies to access their memories, that they can voluntarily adapt the use of these strategies to optimize the likelihood of retrieval success. In this thesis project, we built on the feeling of knowing literature, and we wanted to investigate what precedes and what accompanies autobiographical retrieval. So we wanted to know what makes us start a search in autobiographical memory in the first place. Early during my PhD, we applied findings from the feeling of knowing literature to the biographical ritual to find first element of answers. So we designed a view, and according to this view, we are constantly processing cues, either cues from our environment or internal cues. Sometimes a cue gives us access to autobiographical information spontaneously. That's involuntary retrieval. But most of the time, we process cues that gives us access to no content. If we process a cue that gives us no content and elicits no familiarity, nothing happens. But if this cue gives us no content but elicits a feeling of familiarity, so if this cue triggers a signal that something in our memory has been activated, uh, but we can't remember what yet, here we propose that we can monitor this feeling. If we judge that this feeling is false, we are in a deja vu-like situation and we don't try to recall something. But if we judge that this feeling may be plausible, then we can start a search in our memory. Here we enter a loop similar to the butcher on the bus loop, in which we keep elaborating on the cue. We keep trying to recall something until we manage to do it. This framework combines the two levels of metacognition I described earlier. So we first have a metacognitive feeling that leads us to focus on our memory, and then we can voluntarily monitor this feeling and decide whether we should try to recall something or not. The aim of my thesis was to explore the involvement of such early monitoring during autobiographical ritual. We organized this work around four objectives. First, we wanted to investigate the presence of metacognition at an autobiographical pro-ritual stage. Then, we wanted to know what underlied the metacognitive abilities we observed in our first experiment, and we wanted to investigate the influence of aging on these abilities. Finally, we investigated the individual's ability to monitor the autobiographical ritual across their lifespan. Today, given the time I've got, I will present in details the experiments we conducted to test our two first objectives, and I will give you only a brief overview of what we've done to test the two last objectives. As I said, our first goal was to investigate the individual's ability to monitor the autobiographical retrieval at a pre-retrieval stage. To do so, we carried out two experiments. So that's experiment 4.1 and 4.2 of the thesis manuscript. And for these two experiments, we designed a new procedure, which is the feeling of retrieval procedure. The feeling of retrieval procedure was inspired by the feeling of knowing literature, and more specifically, it comes from a variation of the feeling of knowing procedure, which was designed by Rader and Ritter. In this feeling of knowing variation, the FOK judgments are made in a speeded manner, so in less than 1 second, before trying to recall a memory, and not after failing to recall a memory. So we took this idea and we adapted it to autobiographical memory to design the feeling of retrieval. The feeling of retrieval procedure has two distinct phases. There's first a metacognitive phase and then an autobiographical memory phase. In the metacognitive phase, participants see 100 words one at a time. In the first experiment we conducted, each word was presented for 2 seconds, and in the second experiment we conducted, each word was presented for only 1 second. For each word presented during this metacognitive phase, participants decide whether it will give them fluent access to their autobiographical memory or if it will not. So they are instructed to press the space bar when seeing a word if they think that the word would allow this fluent retrieval, and to not press the space bar if they think that the word will not allow this fluent retrieval. We called the words for which the participants pressed the space bar the fluent access cues, and the words for which they did not press the space bar the limited access cues. Importantly, during this metacognitive phase, participants were explicitly instructed not to try to retrieve memories, to voluntarily retrieve memories during this metacognitive phase. But at the end of this task, we asked them, did you try to voluntarily retrieve memories to make your metacognitive judgments? Yes or no? And if you tried, how often did you base your responses on successful retrieval? So for instance, how often did you press the spacebar to categorize a keyword as a front access queue because you managed to voluntarily retrieve a memory? After responding to this question, participants carried out a filler phase, which aimed to introduce a delay between our two phases of interest, and which also aimed to direct the participants' attentions outside of their autobiographical memory forward. After this filler phase, participants carried out the autobiographical memory phase, in which they were instructed to generate 16 different memories in response to 16 different keywords. Half of these keywords were fluent access cues, and the other half were limited access cues. Importantly, at this point, each participant had their own lists of fluent access cues and limited access cues. In this autobiographical memory phase, when the word was on the screen, participants pressed a key as soon as they had a memory in mind, which allowed us to record the retrieval latency. After pressing this key, they had to describe the memory in a few sentences, and after describing it, they had to rate how easy it was, how easy this memory was to generate on a 1 to 7 scale, 7 being the easiest generation possible. So in this memory phase, we recorded the participant retrieval latencies and ease of generation ratings and used these measures as indicators of retrieval fluency, which is the ease with which the memories were retrieved. Our hypothesis in these two first experiments was simply that if participants can monitor the autobiographical retrieval, then the fluent access cues should lead to more fluent retrievals than the limited access cues. And before presenting our analysis, I'd like to show some statistics about the participants' strategies during the metacognitive phase. In both experiments, we found that participants categorized less than half of the keywords they processed during the metacognitive phase as fluent access cues. We also found in both experiments that the majority of participants reported that they tried to voluntarily retrieve memories to make their metacognitive judgments, and these participants reported that they relied on successful retrieval for most of their responses. Now for the results, so in both experiments, we found that retrievals were faster in response to the fluent access cues than in response to the limited access cues. And importantly, in both experiments, these effects were not influenced by the frequency with which participants relied on successful retrieval to make their metacognitive judgments. Now for the ease of generation ratings. So here you can see the distribution of the ease of generation ratings for each type of queues. So for the fluent access queues and for the limited access queues, 7 being the easiest rating possible. And so in both experiments, we basically found that the memories retrieved in response to the fluent access queues were rated as more easily retrieved than the other memories. So in these two first experiments, we found that participants were able to distinguish which keywords would help them to retrieve memories fluently from the others in just 1 or 2 seconds. And importantly, by giving participants only 1 or 2 seconds to make their metacognitive judgments, we aimed to limit the retrieval of voluntary memories. This means that before accessing a memory, participants were able to distinguish the cues that would allow fluent access to their autobiographical memory from the other cues. This was a good start, but this left us with three possible explanations for the participants' metacognitive judgment. First, as most of the participants reported that they relied on successful retrieval to make their metacognitive judgment, we needed to control for this possibility. So we needed to control for the fact that participants did not retrieve complete memories in response to the words during the metacognitive phase. Also, when we looked at our data, we found that some keywords like birthday were almost always categorized as fluent access cues, and some other keywords like nail were almost always categorized as limited access cues. So if some keywords are simply better in triggering memories, we needed to control for this keyword efficiency on the participants' metacognitive judgment. And finally, we have the metacognitive feeling hypothesis, which is the hypothesis that the participants' metacognitive judgments were driven by the metacognitive feelings the participants experienced during the metacognitive phase of the feeling of retrieval. We had this last hypothesis because we know from the metacognitive literature that experiencing feelings of familiarity leads individuals to report that a memory is accessible. So a similar process may be at play in autobiographical retrieval. To test these three possibilities, we ran a series of 3 experiments. First, we tested the retrieval hypothesis by measuring more precisely what participants retrieved during the metacognitive phase of the feeling of retrieval. We tested the keyword hypothesis by using pairs of words during the metacognitive phase of the feeling of retrieval in order to reduce the influence of the keyword efficiency on the participants' metacognitive judgment. And finally, we tested the metacognitive hypothesis So the hypothesis that the metacognitive judgments were in part driven by a feeling of familiarity triggered by the cue. Uh, to test this hypothesis, we manipulated the feelings of familiarity the participants experienced during the metacognitive phase of the feeling of ritual. So we wanted to boost the feeling of familiarity the participants experience in response to some of the cue words processed during the metacognitive phase. In the first experiment of this series, we tested the retrieval as a keyword hypothesis. To test the keyword hypothesis, we modified the metacognitive phase of the feeling of retrieval to make it a forced choice task. To do so, we created pairs of keywords, and these pairs were not random. These pairs were built by matching the words that were as frequently categorized as fluent access cues in our previous experiments. For instance, birthday and alcohol were paired together. Then we paired the third and the fourth words that are the most frequently categorized as fluent access cues, friends and family, and so on until creating a pair of words with the two words that were the less frequently categorized as fluent access cue, nail and acacia. So nail and acacia were the two words that were the most frequently categorized as limited access cues in our previous experiments. These pairs were ranked from 1 to 50, 1 being the pair containing the words that for which it should be the easiest to generate memories. So 1 being the pair containing the two words that should be the most efficient in triggering memories, and 50 containing the opposite, containing the two words for which the two words that should be the less efficient in triggering memories. These pairs allowed us to increase the difficulty of the metacognitive phase of the feeling of retrieval, since participants needed to make more sensitive metacognitive judgments. As we will see, they couldn't just base their metacognitive judgments on the keyword efficiency anymore. We used these pairs in the metacognitive phase of this new feeling of retrieval procedure. So in this new feeling of retrieval procedure, each pair was presented for 3 seconds during the metacognitive phase. When seeing a pair of words, participants had to indicate which word of the pair would facilitate the most their generation of an autobiographical memory. This means that for each pair of words, participants choose one fluent access cue and the other keyword was categorized as a limited access cue. This means that after this metacognitive phase, each pair of words contained one fluent access cue and one limited access cue. For instance, here I indicate that it would be easier for me to generate a memory in response to birthday. Birthday becomes my fluent access queue in this pair, and alcohol becomes my limited access queue in this pair. After this metacognitive phase, participants carried out the same field of phase as in our previous experiments, and after they carried out the autobiographical memory phase, in which they were instructed to generate 20 memories in response to 20 different keywords. Half of these keywords were fluent access cues and the other half were the limited access cues of the same pairs of words. For instance, if I had to generate a memory in response to birthday, I also had to generate a memory in response to alcohol because birthday and alcohol were in the same pair of words. Then the autobiographical memory phase was similar to the autobiographical memory phase of our first experiments, with one difference. In this autobiographical memory phase, participants had to answer a new question that we called the prior memory retrieval question. This question was regarding this memory, so regarding the memory you just described, what came to mind in the earlier part of the experiment? Participants responded to this question for every memory that generated during the autobiographical memory phase. And to respond, they had to choose one of these 6 options. So they basically indicated whether they had already thought of the same complete memory earlier in the experiment, if they thought of a partial version of this memory, if they just had a feeling that they could recall this memory, or if this memory was completely new, meaning that this memory wasn't retrieved at all during the metacognitive phase of the feeling of ritual. After responding to this prior memory ritual question, participants rated how easy the ritual was on the same scale as before. And so in this experiment, we had 2 goals. First, we wanted to replicate our prior results, namely that fluent access queues should lead to more fluent retrievals than limited access queues, even when participants are required to distinguish the fluent access queues and the limited access queues in pairs of words that contain 2 comparable keywords in terms of efficiency. And we also wanted to explore the extent to which the memories retrieved during the autobiographical memory phase were already retrieved during the metacognitive phase of our experiment, and the influence of this first retrieval on retrieval fluency during the autobiographical memory phase. So first, the results for the retrieval latencies. First, we replicated our prior results. We found that retrieval latencies were, so retrievals were faster in response to fluent access queues than in response to limited access queues. We also found that retrievals were faster when the keywords were supposed to be efficient in triggering memories, so when the keywords came from a pair that was ranked as an easier pair. And finally, we found that the memories that were already partially or fully accessed earlier in the experiment were retrieved more quickly during the autobiographical memory phase. Still looking at the prior memory retrieval question responses, we found that more than half of the memories recalled during the autobiographical memory phase were completely new in the sense that they were not accessed at all during the metacognitive phase. And we also found that the distribution of the prior memory retrieval question responses was significantly different for fluent access queues and limited access queues. And looking at the values, it seems that the fluent access queues were more likely associated with more complete retrievals than the limited access queues. Now, looking at the ease of generation ratings, we found that the odds of rating retrieval as easier increased when it was in response to a fluent access queue. It also increased when the memories were already retrieved earlier in the experiment, and it increased when retrieval was in response to a keyword that was supposed to be efficient in triggering memories. In this first experiment of this series, we found that participants could find the keywords that would facilitate the most their retrieval, even when they had to choose the best keyword among two that were supposed to be similarly efficient in triggering memories. This reinforces our prior results, showing that participants can monitor the autobiographical retrieval at an early stage, and this means that the participants' metacognitive judgments are not just about the cue, there is something else. And this something else is not just the retrieval of complete memories, since we found that a majority of the memories recalled in the autobiographical memory phase were retrieved for the very first time during the autobiographical memory phase. In the next experiment of this series, we wanted to test the metacognitive hypothesis more directly, and we also wanted to test the retrieval hypothesis again, this time with our original feeling of retrieval procedure. In this experiment, we used our original feeling of retrieval procedure with one modification. We did not ask participants the frequency with which they relied on successful retrieval right after the metacognitive phase. Rather, we used our prior memory retrieval question during the autobiographical memory phase. In order to test the metacognitive feeling hypothesis more directly, we wanted to induce a feeling of familiarity in response to some of the words that were processed during the metacognitive phase of the feeling of retrieval. To do so, we used a priming procedure that has been used in relation with the FOK procedure in the literature with the same goal. So before performing the metacognitive phase of the feeling of retrieval, the participants performed this priming procedure. In this priming procedure, participants had to simply to rate the pleasantness of a big set of keywords, and later some of these keywords reappeared as keywords during the metacognitive phase of the feeling of retrieval. The idea here was simply to increase the processing fluency of these repeated keywords, of these primed keywords during the metacognitive phase so that they will feel more familiar than the other words that were not primed. So after this priming procedure, participants carried out our original feeling of retrieval procedure. During the metacognitive phase of this procedure, they categorized 100 words as fluent access queues or limited access queues. Each word was presented for only 1 second, and importantly, 50 of these words were randomly picked and presented during the priming procedure. This means that half of the words the participants categorized as fluent access queues or limited access queues during the metacognitive phase were presented earlier during the priming phase. After this metacognitive phase, participants carried out our original filler phase and our original autobiographical memory phase with the prior memory retrieval question. Our hypothesis here was simply that If a metacognitive feeling of familiarity drives the participant's metacognitive judgment, then the familiar keywords, the primed keywords, should be more likely categorized as fluent access cues than the other keywords. And we also wanted to replicate our prior results with the autobiographical memory phase. First, let's have a look at the participant's metacognitive judgment. So we first found that more familiar cues were categorized as fluent access cues, but we also found that the odds of categorizing a given stimulus as a fluent access cue did not increase when this keyword was primed, thus familiar. So at first, it seems that our manipulation did not work, but when we looked at the autobiographical memory phase responses, we found for the first time no significant differences between fluent access cues and limited access cues in terms of retrieval latencies. This means that for the first time, participants did not accurately distinguish which cues would allow easy retrieval from the others. We also found no significant differences in terms of retrieval latencies between the primed keyword and the other keywords, which was less surprising, but the interaction effect between these two variables was significant. And when we investigated this interaction effect, we found that the difference between the fluent access queues and the limited access queues was significant for the queues that were not used in the priming phase, but was not for the queues that were used in the priming phase, so the familiar keywords. Still looking at the retrieval latencies, we found that the more the memories were fully retrieved earlier in the experiment, the more they were retrieved faster during the autobiographical memory phase. Again, we found that approximately half of the autobiographical memories that were retrieved during the autobiographical memory phase were not retrieved at all earlier in the experiment. So they were not retrieved at all during the metacognitive phase. And again, the fluent access cues were more likely associated with more complete retrievals than the limited access cues. Now, looking at the ease of generation ratings, so we found similar results. We found that the odds of receiving a higher rating did not increase for fluent access queues. It did not increase for the primed keywords, but it did increase when the memories were already retrieved earlier in the experiment. In this experiment, and contrary to our expectations, increasing feelings of familiarity in response to given keywords did not increase the odds of categorizing these keywords as fluent access cues, nor did it facilitate retrieval. But we found for the first time that the participants' metacognitive judgments were not accurate because the participants couldn't accurately distinguish the fluent access cues and the limited access cues. More specifically, we found that the participants' metacognitive judgments were not accurate when they were about the keywords that were primed, but were accurate when they were about the keywords that were not primed. So in some way, we may have influenced these judgments when they were about the primed keywords. We designed one last experiment to conclude this series and to investigate further the influence of the familiarity on the participants' metacognitive judgment. This time, we tried to induce feelings of familiarity while controlling for the keyword efficiency. So in this experiment, we combined the priming phase we use in experiment 5.2 with the forced choice metacognitive phase we use in experiment 5.1. In this metacognitive phase, we used the same pairs of words as before, with the same instruction as before. But the trick is one word from each pair presented during this metacognitive phase was used in the priming phase. This means that when participants had to choose which word from each pair would facilitate the most their autobiographical retrieval, one of the two words they were seeing was the word they processed earlier during the priming phase. So we wanted participants to experience a greater feeling of familiarity in response to one word in each pair. We didn't implement the autobiographical memory phase in this experiment, but at the end of this task, experiment, a participant responded to a manipulation check, which was, did you notice that some keywords were used twice in the experiment, yes or no? And if you noticed, how many words from the priming phase did you recognize during the metacognitive forced choice phase? So again, we found that more familiar cues were categorized as front access cues than the other cues, but this time our manipulation was successful because our analysis found that the odds of categorizing a given keyword as a front access cue increased when this keyword was primed, thus familiar. Importantly, in this experiment, more than half of the participants noticed that some words were used both in the priming and in the metacognitive phases, but these participants recognized on average 15 words out of the 50 that were used twice in the experiment, and hopefully this has no influence on our analysis. So this time, familiarity increased the odds of categorizing a given keyword as a fluent access cue. So in the context of distinguishing which cues would allow more fluent retrieval in pairs that contain two comparable words, familiarity may have helped participants to distinguish between two comparable cues. So familiarity may have acted as an additional cue in favor of the word that was primed, thus familiar. So in this context, in the context of distinguishing the fluent access cue and the limited access cue in two comparable words, familiarity was interpreted as the fact that the memory could be more easily retrieved in response to the primed word. This is in line with other autobiographical memory studies that found that increasing the processing fluency of event descriptions increases the belief that the event actually occurred in the individual's life, and this means that in the context of autobiographical memory, familiarity can be interpreted as the fact that we can retrieve something from our memory even when it's not justified. Taken together, all these results show that participants have a pro-retrieval metacognitive access to their autobiographical retrieval. This means that we can monitor our autobiographical retrieval from its earliest stages. And even when we do not access any autobiographical memory information, we can feel how fluent our retrieval will be. The metacognitive judgments we observed in our experiment are based on different factors. We investigated three of them. First, we found that some keywords were simply better in triggering autobiographical memories than others, and that the participants recognized these keywords and categorized them as a fluent access cue. It is yet not clear what properties make these words better cues, and that's something that could be investigated. We also found that the more a word allowed quick retrieval of autobiographical information during the metacognitive phase, the more it was likely to be categorized as a fluent access cue. And importantly, these two first factors appeared to be reliable predictors of autobiographical retrieval. The last factor we investigated and that influenced the participants' metacognitive judgment is the feeling of familiarity they experience in response to the cue word during the metacognitive phase. But even if this factor influenced the participants' metacognitive judgment, this wasn't a reliable predictor of subsequent autobiographical retrieval. This result is in line with feeling of knowing studies that found that feelings of familiarity, so greater feelings of familiarity leads to greater feeling of knowing and missing information, but greater feelings of familiarity do not predict better memory performances. Now that we have seen the experiments we carried out to explore our two first objectives, I would like to give you an overview of what we did to explore the two last objectives of this thesis. First, in another feeling of retrieval experiment I didn't present, we found that older adults' metacognitive abilities in the feeling of retrieval procedure were not significantly different from these abilities of the young adults. This result adds to ongoing debate in the metacognitive literature regarding whether older adults present metacognitive declines when it's about monitoring the retrieval of specific information from their memory. And for the first time, this question was investigated in the context of autobiographical memory. And we suggested that this, these monitoring abilities seems to be preserved when they're about real-world materials and not experimental-based material. In a final experiment, we combined predictions of performance and retrospective evaluations of performances and found that participants were not aware of the periods of their lives that would allow more fluent retrieval. So we found that the participants' metacognitive judgments were not accurate when they were about broader life periods and not isolated keywords. We proposed two explanations for this result. First, that participants simply failed to monitor their autobiographical retrieval, or that they lacked accurate metacognitive knowledge regarding their autobiographical memory processes. All these experiments, so all the experiments we conducted during this PhD work show that we can assess metacognition in relation to autobiographical memory. We can assess the individual's metacognitive abilities related to their autobiographical memory. So here I put a summary of all our results. I won't detail it, but we can come back to that later if you want. To conclude this talk, I wanted to discuss potential fundamental and applied perspectives that are given by this thesis project and by the procedures we designed. The first question that remains to be answered is what is accessed during the metacognitive phase of the feeling of ritual? So what is accessed in just 1, 2, or 3 seconds when participants are asked to evaluate how fluent the ritual would be in response to a given cue? It's possible that the nature of the information the participants accessed in this short time frame influenced their metacognitive judgment, and that could be investigated. In terms of applied perspectives, research has shown that patients with pathologies such as schizophrenia or depression have difficulties in accessing the episodic components of their autobiographical memory. And this field of research, some researchers from this field of research have postulated that metacognition, a metacognitive decline, could be a factor that partly explain these retrieval difficulties. But yet, this question was investigated only using questionnaires and model Russian analysis. So this question was investigated only indirectly. And so the procedures we designed for this thesis could allow a more direct investigation of this question, because now we saw that we can investigate metacognition in relation to autobiographical ritual, so we can investigate this question more directly. Here are the name of a few persons I'd like to thank for their help during this thesis. And I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer all your questions.